Like I've said it before, quirks acts as an extension of someone else's body, and the word kosei literally translates to individuality. So this means that every quirk is unique to its user, but there are similarities between every user and some quirks. But this does mean that quirks can't be categorized, because if they were unique, exceptionally unique to a user, they couldn't be categorized. Either they're categorized by frequency or by type, and with frequency being categorized via commonality or by rarity. And if you take it a step further, then we can talk about the different quirk types and how they are put into categories, and some being so niche that they need to be categorized as part of a subtype. Emitters, Hatsuro, and also known as operative, whichever word you want to use. These are abilities that allow the user to generate and possibly control certain things or alter existing things around them in certain ways. The emission of emitter types wide variety of properties and abilities, with examples such as brainwashing, explosion, decay, half hot, half cold, as shown by many users throughout the whole entire universe of My Hero Academia. This type of quirk often requires a large amount of conscious efforts to activate them, and also a large amount of concentration to keep them active. This is both shown by Razorhead every time he uses his quirk. Even for a little bit of time, it does require a large amount of concentration and effort for him to actually keep his eyes open. While these types of quirks have no specific range, there are some who need physical contacts to activate them, and while other users can control the amount of their own emission, it is still possible for them to have low control over the amount they can emit, making it possible for the user to hurt themselves from having too much contact with their own quirk, as in the case of them secreting too much or generating too much substances too fast or too long will risk them losing any type of natural resistance to their own quirk, or using any reserves from their own body that correlates with their own quirk. Even more than that, some users in the category have special properties unique to the users only, such as shown by ectoplasm every time he produces clones, each of them having some form of a different property that is quite the same throughout all of the clones. And then others can change properties around them to different degrees with varying effects, and some altering, from molecular alteration as shown by softening, or molecular destruction as shown by decay. While some quirks may cause some bodies to temporarily alternate, which might technically make them fall into the next category, they technically need an outside substance in order for them to activate their quirk. This is shown by Sugar Rush every time he consumes sugar, or IQ every time he drinks tea. I just really thought he liked drinking tea, or maybe he was a fellow tea addict, but that's just me. Anyway, in the quirk frequency table, most common quirks are actually found here, with some rare exceptions such as decay, among other things. Transformation, Henkei, or composite. These abilities cause the user to take on some temporary alternations of some kind, allowing the user to transform for a limited amount of time, often changing into a variety of things such as enhancing, removing, or adding new features to their body altogether. And much similar to the previous type of quirks, these usually require a conscious amount of effort by the user to activate them, and unlike the previous one, most users here can train to initiate them with little consciousness as if second nature, but this all depends on the condition of the required activation for the quirk and the practice to initiate the quirk with greater and more precision. And similar to the one above, most, if not all, of the quirk users are close proximity, due to most of them only affecting themselves rather than the surrounding environment. While users of this quirk are technically powerful, most of them suffer from the fact that most of the effects of the quirk are only temporary, and much similar to anything overworked, and any overexertion usually leads to a negative repercussion on the body of the user. But since most of the quirks are limitedly based on the user, the body, and the resources available to them, take Tetsu as an example. Technically, he uses iron from his own body to supplement how he uses his quirk going forward, and if he actually was allowed to actually train it to be far more better, he might be actually more effective at actually increasing his defense of his quirk. But that's just a technical aspect of looking at his quirk. And like any quirk, most users can condition their body in a way that allows them to use their quirk more effectively. And looking on it, most quirks technically in this category are a mix of the other two types of quirks by combining the activation of emitters and the mutation aspect of the other type, although it's only temporary. Mutant, Egio, and Heteromorphic. These are the abilities that cause the user to have a permanent abnormality that directly relates to the quirk. Most of the users here have a little bit more freedom with their quirk, which allows them to use their more complex quirks in ways that the other two cannot safely do. And since users are in the mutant classification, they often have additional appendages that they can control or additional structures and added to pre-existing limbs to enhance already existing abilities. And side note, there are some exceptions that look like they should be falling into other categories such as earphone jack, but technically she's a mutant because of how her earphones jacks are connected to her ears technically. And since these quirks cause the user to have a permanent abnormality, it means that a gene can be passed on to the next generation that does not have the corresponding quirk to work with, and that means that they can just pass on the appearance rather than both the appearance and the quirk. This is shown by multiple people in class 1A, and as such Magaki's bird head that really has nothing to do with Dark Shadow at the very least. The only downside that I can write about this quirk is the slight inconvenience that you'll come across, such as Ojiro's tail and him sitting down, and Shoji's dupli arms, which make it impossible for him to wear clothes with sleeves, and since most of them can't really turn it off, they're often passively active, which means people with quirk disabling effects don't really work well on them as much as it could work on the other two groups, and since they're mutations, they can easily be identified at first glance. And this wraps up everything you need to know about quirks. But now preposition. I want to talk about quirks in general from the beginning of the epidemic to the theory of quirk singularity. I propose a suggestion. What if Shisaki, or the doctor who was expelled from society due to his fringe thinking, was correct? Let's expand on this. The doctor proposed a theory after viewing the growth of power from different generations, with the fourth generation being more potent than the previous generations. Alongside this, there is a theory that suggests that a virus was the cause for the age of quirks. If you're following along this, then you can also say that quirks are kind of a side effect of a virus that seemingly has no downsides. And let's close off with the question yet again. What if Shisaki was right? What if quirks are a disease? Are they going to be the detriment of humanity? Will they cause the collapse of humanity due to people not being able to control them? Or are people going to end up quirkless due to people not being able to ignore it anymore and people being too powerful to control it? Or will everything just be blown over and people continue using quirks rather the same way they always have been? Whichever way it is, leave your comment down below to tell me what you think about this. And if you really like the video, hit that like button and subscribe for new content. Thank you for watching.